Gloria Lee stood in crimson silk before Seoul's most dangerous man on their wedding night, her heart steady as stone, when he delivered his vows like a death sentence. Don't ever expect love from me. She smiled because expecting love from Lee Sun-min would be like expecting mercy from winter. Beautiful, perhaps, but ultimately foolish. What he didn't know was that Gloria Washington hadn't survived her father's catastrophic legacy by expecting kindness from cruel men. She'd survived by becoming something they never anticipated, a woman who played chess while they were still learning checkers. Where in the map are you watching from? The silk sheets felt cold against Gloria's skin as she sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her wedding hanbok. The traditional Korean dress had been custom-made in deep crimson, the color of luck and celebration, though tonight it felt more like the color of warning signs and stoplights. The gold embroidery caught the dim light from Seoul's skyline, each thread probably worth more than her entire college education. Funny how you could wear a fortune and still feel absolutely broke. Lee Sun-min stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of their penthouse suite in Gangnam, his broad shoulders silhouetted against the glittering cityscape like some kind of beautiful nightmare. Even in the darkness, he commanded the room with an authority that made grown men tremble and made Gloria want to check if her life insurance policy was up to date. At 32, he was the youngest boss to ever control the Busan territory, a position earned through ruthlessness, brilliant strategy, and, if the rumors were true, a truly impressive body count. The wedding had been a spectacle. 300 guests, half of whom were probably criminals, the other half definitely criminals. Gloria had smiled through 7 hours of ceremony and reception, bowing to people who'd likely ordered hits before breakfast, accepting congratulations from women dripping in diamonds that were definitely not ethically sourced. Sun-min's mother had cried, actual tears, while whispering to Gloria in Korean, "Take care of my son. He seems cold, but he has a warm heart." Gloria had wanted to ask if that warm heart was metaphorical or if he kept actual warm hearts in a freezer somewhere, but that seemed rude. "Don't ever expect love from me," Sun-min said without turning around, his voice as cold as the January wind rattling the windows. There it was, the romantic declaration every girl dreams of on her wedding night. "Move over, Romeo. Step aside, Mr. Darcy." Lee Sun-min was redefining marriage goals one emotionally devastating statement at a time. Gloria's fingers tightened around the embroidered fabric of her dress. She'd known what she was getting into when she agreed to this arrangement 6 months ago. Their marriage was a business transaction, her protection and debt forgiveness in exchange for legitimacy and international connections. As the daughter of a deceased American diplomat who'd gotten spectacularly entangled with the wrong people, she'd become a liability that Sun-min's organization needed to contain. Marriage was cleaner than the alternative, which involved several very permanent solutions that she preferred not to think about. "I don't," she replied quietly, proud that her voice didn't shake. Her grandmother would have been proud. That woman had faced down segregationists, corrupt politicians, and one particularly aggressive door-to-door salesman without ever losing her composure. Gloria came from a long line of women who didn't flinch. He turned then, his sharp features catching the ambient light from the city below. There was something devastating about his beauty, the kind that felt dangerous to admire, like appreciating a loaded gun or a perfectly crafted knife. His dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and invisible, like he was looking through her to calculate the exact monetary value of her continued existence. Good, then we understand each other. Understanding and acceptance were different things, Gloria thought, but she kept that observation to herself. Instead, she stood up, the hanbok rustling around her like expensive armor, and walked to the window beside him. Seoul spread out below them like a circuit board of light and possibility. Millions of people living their lives completely unaware that somewhere in Gangnam, a woman had just married a man who'd basically opened with "I'm emotionally unavailable" as his wedding vows. "Your mother cried today," Gloria said, because apparently she decided that poking the dangerous criminal was tonight's entertainment. "My mother cries at commercials," Sun-min replied without missing a beat. "Last week she cried because a dog food advertisement had a particularly compelling narrative arc." Gloria bit back a laugh. "She told me you have a warm heart. My mother is an optimist. It's her greatest flaw. What's yours?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Gloria felt the weight of that gaze like a physical thing. I don't have flaws, Mrs. Lee. I have strategic vulnerabilities that I've systematically eliminated. That sounds exhausting. It's effective. They stood in silence for a moment, two strangers bound by legal documents and mutual necessity, watching Soul breathe and pulse below them. Gloria wondered what her college friend were doing right now. Probably not standing in designer wedding attire next to a man who spoke about eliminating vulnerabilities like other people discuss their grocery lists. I'm going to change, she said finally, gesturing to her dress. This thing weighs about 40 pounds, and I'm pretty sure the embroidery is actively cutting off circulation to my legs. The guest room is prepared for you, Sun Min said, his tone perfectly neutral. Down the hall, second door on the left. Of course, separate rooms, because nothing said happily married quite like immediate segregation. Gloria nodded, gathering her skirts like some kind of crimson-clad ghost, and headed for the door. She paused at the threshold, some self-destructive impulse making her turn back. Sun Min, he raised an eyebrow. It was the most expression she'd seen from him all day. Thank you for not actually killing me. I know that was on the table at one point. For just a second, so brief she might have imagined it, something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or indigestion. Hard to tell with him. The night is young, Mrs. Lee. Gloria laughed, actually laughed, and left him standing there in the darkness. As she walked down the hallway of her new home, a penthouse that probably cost more than a small country's GDP, she thought about the absurdity of her situation. 6 months ago, she'd been drowning in her father's debts, one bad decision away from becoming a cautionary tale. Now she was married to Seoul's most eligible sociopath, wearing a dress that cost more than a car, living in an apartment that looked like it had been designed by someone who really loved minimalism and really hated warmth. The guest room was exactly what she expected. Beautiful, sterile, and about as welcoming as a hospital waiting room. Gloria peeled off the hanbok with relief, hanging it carefully in the closet because despite everything, the dress was gorgeous and destroying it seemed wasteful. She pulled on comfortable clothes, yoga pants, and an oversized sweatshirt that said art history because starving artist wasn't specific enough, and collapsed onto the bed. Her phone buzzed. A message from her best friend back in the States. How was the wedding? Details immediately. Gloria stared at the screen. How did one explain that her wedding night consisted of her husband declaring emotional unavailability and then banishing her to a guest room? She typed, "It was beautiful, very traditional. I'll send photos tomorrow." She didn't mention the part about marrying to avoid being murdered. That seemed like a second date conversation topic. As Gloria lay there, staring at the ceiling of her gilded cage, she thought about her father's last words to her. "Gloria, darling, I may have made some poor financial decisions. Understatement of the century, Dad. Understatement of the century." Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to be Mrs. Lee Sun Min tomorrow. She'd navigate the impossible politics of being married to a man who treated emotions like tactical weaknesses. Tomorrow, she'd start building whatever strange life awaited her in Seoul's criminal underworld. Tonight, she was just Gloria Washington, 25 years old, holder of a useless art history degree, and the newest member of a family whose business card probably read, "Lee Enterprises, we definitely don't run the Korean underworld. Stop asking." Sleep came slowly, interrupted by the sounds of the city and the occasional reminder that she'd just legally bound herself to a man who'd threatened her with finger removal less than a month ago. But hey, at least she still had all her fingers. That had to count for something. Where in the map are you watching from? Gloria woke up to the smell of coffee and the unsettling realization that she was now married to a man who probably had people killed before his morning espresso. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the guest room, illuminating exactly how expensive everything in her new life was. Even the alarm clock looked like it cost more than her student loans. She shuffled into the kitchen wearing her "I survived my MF hoodie and fuzzy socks," her hair wrapped in a silk bonnet, looking exactly like someone who hadn't expected to encounter another human being before noon. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans. Lee Sun Min sat at the breakfast bar in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than a semester's tuition, reading a newspaper, An actual physical newspaper like some kind of handsome villain from a period drama. He looked up as she entered, his expression flickering through what might have been surprise before settling back into his default setting of handsome statue. "Good morning, Mrs. Lee." "It's too early for formality," Gloria muttered, beelining for the coffee maker. "Call me that again before caffeine, and I'll divorce you for irreconcilable differences in morning person philosophy." She could have sworn she heard a quiet exhale that might have been a laugh, but when she turned around, his face was perfectly neutral. The kitchen was obscenely nice, all marble countertops and appliances that probably had more computing power than NASA. Gloria found a mug, also probably worth more than her car back home, and poured coffee, then froze. The breakfast spread on the counter looked like it had been catered by someone who really wanted to impress. Fresh croissants, multiple types of fruit arranged in a pattern that suggested someone had taken geometry very seriously, Korean side dishes she couldn't name, and, she blinked, a plate of perfectly made waffles with fresh berries. "Did you cook?" she asked, immediately regretting the question because the idea of Seoul's most dangerous crime boss making waffles was somehow more terrifying than his actual job. "Mrs. Kong comes at 6, Sun Min said, turning a page of his newspaper. "She was enthusiastic about meeting my wife. I believe she made enough food to feed a small battalion." "Mrs. Kong, the housekeeper. She's been with my family for 30 years. She also has very strong opinions about breakfast being the most important meal of the day and will take it personally if you don't eat." He paused. "She once made my lieutenant cry for skipping lunch." Gloria grabbed a waffle. "I like her already." They ate in surprisingly comfortable silence for approximately 45 seconds before Sun Min's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something dark crossed his face, the kind of expression that suggested someone, somewhere, had made a very poor life choice. "Problem?" Gloria asked, immediately regretting it, because asking a mob boss about his problems seemed like a great way to become an accessory to something. "Nothing that concerns you," he said, but his jaw tightened in a way that suggested it very much concerned someone, and that someone was about to have a bad day. "Is it the kind of problem that requires, what did Kim prefer? Toes?" Sun Min looked at her sharply, and Gloria realized she just referenced her own potential dismemberment over breakfast. Her therapist back home would have so many notes about this coping mechanism. "You have an unusual sense of humor, Mrs. Lee." "Trauma," Gloria said cheerfully, biting into a strawberry. "It's a coping mechanism. My therapist says it's healthier than repression, but honestly, the jury's still out." "You see a therapist?" "Saw. Past tense. She emigrated to Canada after reviewing my case file. I think I broke her." This time, Sunmin definitely almost smiled. It was there for a fraction of a second, a tiny crack in the ice sculpture of his face before disappearing completely. "I have meetings today," he said, standing and buttoning his jacket with the precision of someone who'd never had a wrinkled collar in his life. "My driver will take you anywhere you need to go. The black car downstairs. Do I have a curfew? Should I text you if I'm going to be late? Are there specific neighborhoods I should avoid because of rival gang territories?" Gloria was absolutely not supposed to be enjoying this, but the absurdity of her situation had fully settled in, and apparently her response was sarcasm. Sunmin paused at the doorway. "Don't go to Itaewon after dark. Don't speak to anyone wearing a red pocket square. And if someone offers you tea from a man named Young, don't drink it. That's oddly specific. Young's tea is terrible. It's an insult to tea everywhere." And then he was gone, leaving Gloria alone in a kitchen that cost more than her childhood home, eating waffles made by a housekeeper who could make grown men cry, married to a man who gave safety instructions that included beverage reviews. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Lee, this is Secretary Yang. Mr. Lee has requested I send you his schedule so you're aware of his commitments. He also asked me to inform you that Mrs. Kong left bibimbap for your lunch and will be very disappointed if you don't eat it." His words, not mine. Gloria stared at her phone. Her husband, her emotionally unavailable, definitely a criminal husband, had his secretary text her to make sure she ate lunch. She typed back, "Tell Mr. Lee that I'm an adult who can feed herself, but thank you." The response came immediately. Mr. Lee says, and I quote, Tell my wife that Mrs. Kong is scarier than I am, and her disappointment is not something I wish on anyone. End quote. Gloria laughed so hard she nearly choked on her coffee. This marriage was going to be absolutely insane. She couldn't wait. Gloria had exactly 27 minutes of peace before her new life came crashing through the door in the form of Lee Sun-min's mother, a woman who moved through the world like an elegant tornado with a Chanel handbag. Gloria, Mrs. Lee sang out, sweeping into the penthouse with the confidence of someone who'd raised a criminal mastermind and considered it a successful parenting outcome. I brought kimchi and your husband's baby photos. And also I need to talk to you about your Instagram. Gloria, who'd been enjoying her bibimbap in blessed solitude, nearly choked on a radish. My Instagram? Yes, you have 43 followers. This is unacceptable for the wife of Lee Sun-min. Mrs. Lee set down approximately 7 containers of homemade kimchi and pulled out her phone with the determination of a woman on a mission. I have 12,000 followers. I will teach you. Mrs. Lee, I really don't think. Call me Amma, she insisted, already scrolling through Gloria's feed with the critical eye of a social media consultant. Oh no. No. This picture from last week. This kimchi is making me question my life choices. Gloria, that was store-bought kimchi. You tagged the location. Everyone knows that store uses too much salt. Gloria wanted to point out that she'd been questioning her life choices because she was about to marry a mob boss to avoid being murdered, not because of sodium content, but that seemed like information her mother-in-law didn't need. I'm sorry, Gloria offered weakly. And this one, Mrs. Lee continued, gaining momentum like a disappointed freight train. You're eating tteokbokki with a fork. A fork, Gloria. The comments. Oh, the comments are so mean. User soul_foodie_88 says you're disrespecting Korean culture. User kimchi_queen says you should go back to America. Okay, but in my defense, I was very drunk and chopsticks felt like an advanced motor skill I hadn't unlocked yet. Mrs. Lee looked at her with an expression of such profound maternal concern that Gloria felt like she was 12 again and had just come home with a bad report card. This is why you need my help, Mrs. Lee said, patting Gloria's hand. Being married to Sun-min means people will watch everything you do. You must have perfect image. Also, better captions. This kimchi is making me question my life choices is very negative. Try grateful for this delicious kimchi. Hashtag blessed, hashtag kimchi love, hashtag married life. Gloria stared at her mother-in-law. Did you just hashtag blessed in a verbal conversation? I'm teaching you. Mrs. Lee pulled out the baby photos with flourish. Now look at my Sun-min. So cute. This one is from his first birthday. And this one is from when he was 5 and won the Taekwondo competition by making the other boy cry. The photo showed a tiny Sun-min holding a trophy, his face set in the exact same expressionless mask he wore now. Apparently, emotional unavailability started early. He looks determined, Gloria said diplomatically. He made the boy cry by staring at him. Mrs. Lee said proudly, no touching, just staring. The other mother complained, but I said, my son has powerful aura. What can I do? She beamed like this was a completely normal and not at all terrifying childhood achievement. Gloria's phone buzzed. A text from Sun-min. Is my mother there? Yes, Gloria typed back. She's showing me photos of you, making children cry with your aura. Tell her I'm in a meeting. She can probably hear you're not in a meeting through the phone. Tell her anyway. Gloria looked up at Mrs. Lee, who is now posting a photo on Instagram of Gloria eating bibimbap with the caption, my beautiful daughter-in-law enjoying lunch. Such a good appetite. Hashtag family love, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag bibimbap queen. Your son says he's in a meeting, Gloria said. Mrs. Lee snorted. He's avoiding me because I told him he needs to smile more in photos. Last week we went to his cousin's wedding and he looked like he was attending a funeral. Very bad for family image. She turned back to Gloria with renewed intensity. This is why you're so important. You will humanize him, make him seem approachable. Mrs. Lee, I don't think anything could make your son seem approachable. He threatened someone yesterday for serving him bad tea. The tea was very bad, Mrs. Lee said reasonably. Young should know better. But this is exactly what I mean. You need to post couple photos. Show the world that Sun-min has a heart. Does he though? Mrs. Lee paused, considering this seriously. Metaphorically, yes. Literally, also yes, I saw his medical records. Emotionally, she made a wavering hand gesture. We're working on it. This is 40-year project. Gloria's phone exploded with notifications. Mrs. Lee's Instagram post had been liked 3,000 times in 4 minutes. The comments were a mix of Korean and English, ranging from "so beautiful" to "is that the American wife?" to one particularly memorable, "she eats bibimbap better than my Korean girlfriend. I'm so confused about my feelings right now." See? Mrs. Lee said triumphantly. You're already viral. Now we just need to work on your chopstick technique and teach you how to take selfies with better lighting. The overhead fluorescent is very unflattering to your complexion. Gloria looked at the bibimbap, then at her mother-in-law, then at her phone where she was apparently now hashtag bibimbap queen with 847 new followers. Her life had become a K-drama written by someone on hallucinogens. More kimchi, Mrs. Lee offered, already opening another container. Yes, Gloria said, because when your mother-in-law was a social media influencer married to a crime family, you took the wins where you could get them, even if those wins came in fermented vegetable form. Gloria had been Mrs. Lee for exactly 1 week when she received her first official summons. Not from the police, yet, not from immigration, thankfully, but from something far more terrifying, the Wives' Council. Secretary Yang had delivered the news via text at 8 a.m. Mrs. Lee, you've been invited to lunch with the association wives. 1 p.m. today. Dress code. Elegant but not trying too hard. Mr. Lee says to remember everything you see and hear. Also, don't accept any gift from Mrs. Cho. She's still upset about the merger. Gloria stared at her phone. What merger? What gifts? What is happening? Yang responded immediately. Mr. Lee says you'll figure it out. He has faith in your survival instincts. P.S. With a navy dress in your closet. Mrs. Kong already steamed it. Of course she did. 3 hours later, Gloria found herself in a private room at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, surrounded by 5 women who looked like they'd stepped out of a luxury handbag advertisement. They were all perfectly coiffed, perfectly dressed, and perfectly terrifying in that specific way that came from being married to men who could make people disappear. Gloria SSI. Mrs. Cho, a woman in her 50s with the bone structure of a supermodel and the eyes of a loan shark, smiled with too many teeth. How wonderful to finally meet you. We've heard so much about Sun Min's unexpected marriage. The way she said unexpected made it sound like catastrophic mistake. It's lovely to meet you all, Gloria said, channeling every diplomatic dinner she'd ever attended with her father. Smile. Be pleasant. Don't mention that everyone's husband is probably a criminal. You're so exotic, chirped Mrs. Yoon, a woman who definitely didn't mean that as a compliment. I've never seen hair like yours up close. Is it real? Gloria's smile didn't falter, even though her eye twitched. As real as your Hermes bag. The temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees. Mrs. Park, the youngest of the group at maybe 40, laughed so suddenly she nearly choked on her water. Oh, I like her. She has spine, unlike the last girl who tried to marry into the association. What was her name? The one who cried during the initiation lunch. There's an initiation? Gloria asked. You're having it now, dear, Mrs. Cho said sweetly. Tell us, how did you and Sun Min meet? We're all so curious. Gloria considered her options. She could tell them the truth. That she'd insulted gangsters in a pojangmaka while drunk and her future husband had proposed marriage as an alternative to dismemberment. Or she could lie. She chose chaos. He saved me from a bad situation, Gloria said, which was technically true. I was in over my head, and he offered me a way out. It was very romantic. Romantic, Mrs. Yoon repeated skeptically. Sun Min? Lee Sun Min? The man who once showed up to a charity gala and spent the entire evening standing in a corner looking like he was planning everyone's funeral. That's him, Gloria confirmed. He's very intense. Intense, Mrs. Park snorted. That's diplomatic. My husband says Sun Min once negotiated a territorial dispute by staring at the other boss for 45 minutes without blinking. The other boss blinked first and agreed to everything. Gloria filed that information away under things about my husband that are definitely normal. Mrs. Cho leaned forward, her expression sharpening. You know, dear, being part of this family comes with certain expectations. We wives have our own roles to play. Maintaining appearances, hosting events, ensuring our husbands' reputations remain pristine. She paused meaningfully. We heard about your Instagram incident. Of course they had. My mother-in-law is helping me with my social media presence, Gloria said carefully. Yes, we saw the bibimbap post. Very enthusiastic. Mrs. Cho's smile could have cut glass. But perhaps you should reconsider some of your more American habits. The fork incident, for example. People talk. Gloria felt something inside her snap. Maybe it was the week of walking on eggshells. Maybe it was Mrs. Yoon's comment about her hair. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of being lectured about cutlery by women whose husbands probably had offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Mrs. Cho, Gloria said, her voice honey-sweet, I appreciate the advice. Really? But I'm curious, when you married into your family, did they make you change everything about yourself? Or did they accept that you brought something valuable to the table beyond just looking pretty and staying quiet? The silence was deafening. Mrs. Park's eyes went wide. Mrs. Yoon gasped. Mrs. Cho's face did something complicated. Then Mrs. Park started laughing. Actually laughing, not the polite tittering that had filled the room before. Oh, Sunmin definitely chose well, she said, wiping her eyes. Gloria SSI, I think we're going to be friends. Mrs. Cho looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Well, I suppose the younger generation has different ideas about respect. I respect people who respect me, Gloria said simply. It's very American of me, I know. The lunch continued with slightly less tension and significantly more interesting conversation. Mrs. Park turned out to be hilarious, sharing stories about association events that sounded like a mix between a mafia movie and a comedy of errors. Mrs. Yoon gradually warmed up after Gloria complimented her earrings. Genuine compliment. They were stunning. Even Mrs. Cho seemed to thaw slightly, though she maintained her position as the group's unofficial queen bee. As Gloria left the restaurant, her phone buzzed. Sunmin, how did it go? I either made friends or enemies. Possibly both. That's usually how these things work. Did you accept any gifts from Mrs. Cho? No gifts were offered. Should I be insulted? Probably. It means she's still deciding whether to like you or destroy you. Your world is exhausting. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Lee. Gloria looked at the message and smiled despite herself. Yeah, welcome to the family indeed. Gloria had been living in peaceful routine for 3 weeks when Lee Sun-min came home bleeding. It was 2 a.m. on a Thursday, and she'd been awake reading a novel in the guest room because jet lag was a gift that kept on giving. She heard the penthouse door open, followed by uncharacteristically heavy footsteps, and then silence. Something felt wrong. Gloria found him in his study, tie loosened, jacket discarded on the floor, which was alarming because Sun-min treated his clothes like sacred artifacts, reviewing documents with a cut above his eye that was still actively bleeding. His white shirt had blood on the collar, and his knuckles were bruised in a way that suggested the other guy looked worse. Much worse. Let me, she said from the doorway, holding up the first aid kit she'd learned to keep stocked. Because apparently, being married to a crime boss meant maintaining emergency medical supplies like a doomsday prepper. I know you don't need anything from me, Gloria interrupted, surprising them both. You've made that abundantly clear. But I'm here anyway, and you're bleeding on documents that probably cost more than my student loans. So let me clean that cut before you ruin your paperwork with DNA evidence. Sun-min stared at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he nodded, leaning back in his chair with the resignation of a man who'd learned that arguing with Gloria Lee, was an exercise in futility. She approached carefully, like one might approach a beautiful but potentially bitey animal, and began cleaning the wound. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders carried weight that would crush most people. Bad night? She asked, dabbing antiseptic on the cut. Complicated night. His hand caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her movement. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since their wedding night, she saw something other than calculated distance in them. Why did you learn Korean so well? The question caught her off guard. What? You've been here less than a year. You speak better Korean than some people I know who've lived here for decades. You learned our customs, adapted to everything without complaint. Why do you try so hard? Gloria set down the antiseptic, considering her answer carefully. She could give him the diplomatic response, the easy one. But something about the hour, the blood, the unexpected vulnerability in his question made her choose honesty instead. Because this is my life now, she said quietly. I can either exist in it or live in it. I choose to live. She resumed, cleaning the cut, her movements gentle. My father spent 30 years in foreign service and never bothered learning more than basic phrases in any language. He existed everywhere and lived nowhere. I watched him sleepwalk through life, making catastrophically bad decisions because he never actually paid attention to the world around him. She paused. I refused to be him. Sun Min was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her suddenly aware of how close they were. You're angry with him. Your father. I'm furious with him, Gloria admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. He left me drowning in his mess. 50,000 in debt to people who collect in body parts. A portfolio of evidence that could get me killed. No plan, no protection, just chaos. She laughed bitterly. And you want to know the worst part? I still miss him. How stupid is that? Not stupid. Sun Min's voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Complicated. Love usually is. Is that why you don't do it? The question escaped before Gloria could stop it. Love, I mean, because it's complicated. His hand rose to cover hers where it rested against his jaw, and Gloria's breath caught. This close, she could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth of his skin, could smell his cologne mixed with something darker, smoke and danger and secrets. My father arranged my first engagement when I was 16, he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that suggested old wounds. Her name was G1. She was brilliant, kind, everything my mother wanted for me. His jaw tightened. The rival family killed her to get to me. May it look like an accident. I was 17 when I learned that love is a weapon people use against you. Understanding bloomed in Gloria's chest like a winter flower breaking through ice. His coldness wasn't cruelty, it was protection. For both of them. Every distant gesture, every emotional wall, every carefully maintained boundary was armor built from grief and guilt. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. It taught me an important lesson. But his hand was still covering hers, his thumb tracing absent circles on her wrist in a gesture that contradicted everything he was saying. What lesson? That caring about people gets them killed. Gloria looked at this beautiful, damaged man who'd saved her life while pushing her away and made a decision that was either incredibly brave or monumentally stupid. Then we'll make our own rules, she said, her free hand rising to cup his uninjured cheek. No expectations, no demands, just whatever this becomes, however long it takes. You're more dangerous than you appear, Gloria Lee. She smiled, and for the first time, it felt real. Genuine. Like maybe this bizarre arrangement could become something neither of them expected. Good. Then we really do understand each other. Sun Min's hand slid from her wrist to her waist, pulling her closer with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man who'd probably broken someone's bones earlier that evening. You should go back to your room. Should I? Yes. But he wasn't letting go. Are you going to make me? No. They stayed like that, frozen in a moment that felt stolen from someone else's life, until Sun Min finally released her and stood, putting distance between them like a man remembering his own rules. Good night, Gloria. Good night, Sun Min. As she walked back to her room, Gloria's wrist still tingled where he'd held it. Behind her closed door, she touched her face where his hand had been and smiled. The ice was cracking, and neither of them was ready for what would happen when it finally broke. Gloria learned 3 important things over the next month. Mrs. Kong made the best hangover soup in Seoul. Mrs. Lee's Instagram advice was surprisingly effective. She now had 15,000 followers, and Lee Sun Min was actively avoiding her. After their moment in his study, he'd become a ghost. Gone before she woke up, home long after she slept. Their only communication came through Secretary Yang's perfectly polite text messages. Mr. Lee will be dining out tonight. Mr. Lee is traveling to Busan. Mr. Lee asks if you need anything from the department store. What Gloria needed was answers, but apparently those weren't available for purchase. She was contemplating this while aggressively reorganizing the kitchen. Mrs. Kong had the day off and Gloria needed to do something with her hands. when the penthouse door slammed open with enough force to rattle the windows. Sunmin stood in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, his shirt untucked, his always perfect hair, disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He looked wild, unhinged, absolutely nothing like the controlled man she'd married. "We need to talk," he said, his voice rough. Gloria set down the spatula she'd been holding. "You've been avoiding me for 4 weeks. What changed?" "Everything." He crossed the space between them in 3 strides, backing her against the counter with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow wasn't. "My mother called. She showed me your Instagram. You posted a picture yesterday. I post pictures every day. Your mother insists on it. This one was different." He pulled out his phone, showing her the image. Gloria at a coffee shop, laughing at something off camera, sunlight streaming through the window, completely unguarded and genuinely happy. The caption read, "Finding home in unexpected places. Hashtag soul, hashtag new beginnings, hashtag grateful heart. I don't understand. You looked happy," Sunmin interrupted, his voice strained. "Actually happy. And I realized I've been lying to myself." Gloria's heart was hammering. About what? About not wanting this. Not wanting you. His hands gripped the counter on either side of her, caging her in. "I told myself I was protecting you by keeping distance. That if I didn't care, you'd be safe. But then Mrs. Park called today, asking if you'd join the charity board. And Mrs. Cho, who hates everyone, said you were refreshingly honest. And my mother won't stop sending me articles about emotional availability in modern marriages. And he stopped, seeming to struggle with word for the first time since she'd met him. "You what?" Gloria prompted, barely breathing. "I came home early yesterday. You didn't know. You were in the living room, dancing to American music in my Princeton sweatshirt. When did you steal my Princeton sweatshirt?" "Eating ice cream directly from the container and laughing at some show on your laptop. And I stood in the hallway for 20 minutes just watching you exist in my space like you belong there." "Sun Min, I'm terrified," he said, the admission seeming to cost him everything. "I'm absolutely terrified because the last time I let myself care about someone, she died. But I can't stop thinking about you. The way you argued with those wives. How you learned Korean to curse out my associates. That you kept my mother's kimchi even though I know you don't like radish. The fact that you're not afraid of me even though you probably should be." Gloria reached up, cupping his face with both hands, feeling the tension in his jaw. "I'm afraid of you." He flinched. "But not because I think you'll hurt me," she continued. "I'm afraid because I'm starting to care about you too, and that wasn't part of the plan. This was supposed to be a business arrangement. Protection in exchange for legitimacy. No feelings. No complications. Gloria, let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "You said on our wedding night not to expect love from you. And I didn't. I don't. But I need to know, is there a possibility? Eventually? Because I can wait. I'm patient. But I need to know if I'm waiting for something or just torturing myself." Sun Min's forehead dropped to hers, his eyes closing like he was in pain. "I don't know how to do this. How to care about someone without destroying them or myself." "Then we'll figure it out together," Gloria whispered. "New rules, remember? Whatever this becomes." His hands moved from the counter to her waist, pulling her closer. "You're asking me to risk everything. I'm asking you to try. And if I can't, if I'm too broken for this, then we'll be broken together." She smiled, even though her heart was breaking a little. "I'm already in this, Sun Min. All the way in. The question is whether you're brave enough to jump with me." For a long moment, he just looked at her, and Gloria saw every wall he'd built, every defense mechanism, every carefully constructed barrier that had kept him safe for 15 years. She watched him weigh the cost of vulnerability against the price of loneliness. Then Lee Sun Min, the youngest crime boss in Seoul, the man who negotiated with stares and ruled with calculated distance, did the bravest thing he'd ever done. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and raw and tasted like fear and hope and 15 years of loneliness finally finding an end. His hands tangled in her hair, hers gripped his shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this: two broken people trying to build something whole. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sun Min rested his forehead against hers again. "I can't promise you normal," he said quietly. "I don't want normal. Normal is boring. I can't promise I won't mess this up. Then mess it up. We'll figure it out. I can't promise, Sun Min." Gloria cut him off, smiling. Just promise you'll try. He was quiet for a moment, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with a tenderness that seemed impossible from hands that had done such violent things. I promise. 3 floors below, in a black sedan with tinted windows, Secretary Young glanced at his watch and smiled. He'd been betting on this moment for weeks. Mrs. Lee, the elder, owed him 50,000 won. 2 buildings over. Mrs. Cho lowered her binoculars and called Mrs. Park. You in the pool. They kissed. Gloria lasted exactly 5 weeks. Pay up. Mrs. Park crowed. I told you she had staying power. And in the penthouse, Gloria and Sun Min stood wrapped in each other, both terrified and exhilarated, neither knowing that in 72 hours, everything would change again. Because Sun Min's past was about to walk through the door, and she was carrying secrets that would either destroy them or forge them into something unbreakable. The game, as they say, was just beginning. If you think Lee Sun Min is finally ready for love after years of pushing everyone away, drop a comment saying, give love a chance. Only cold-hearted people who side with loneliness won't. And hit that subscribe button if you believe everyone deserves a second chance at happiness, because the haters and the cynics definitely won't. Asterisk asterisk. What do you think happens when Sun Min's past shows up? Drop your theories below.